Hello everybody! Welcome to one of the most ridiculous challenges I have ever attempted to complete in a Persona game. I've done my fair share of smaller challenges here and there, but this probably tops everything I've attempted so far. Now, while the modern Persona games aren't exactly renowned for their insane difficulty, we're gonna try to spice things up a bit for the sake of this challenge run. A run where one mistake could mean the difference between victory or death. A run where we blur the fine line between difficult and why am I even doing this to myself. Here are the rules of this challenge, and I'll be going over these more as we progress along the run. But to cut this intro short, in this playthrough of Persona 3 Reload, I attempted to beat every single full moon boss and floor guardian hitless, all the while playing on the hardest difficulty, Merciless. Think it's possible? Well, I sure do hope so. We start off our new game by selecting Merciless, and now you might be thinking, a run like this is just a matter of grinding so we easily overpower every single boss, right? Well, maybe. In theory, we could max out our level in the very first block of Tartarus, but I don't really want this to be that kind of run. Unless you're a fan of repetitive and tedious gameplay, that wouldn't be fun for anyone, would it? For now, I'll say that while this challenge will inevitably require over-leveling for most boss fights, I still try to keep grinding times to a minimum. Think of this run less as the usual, how much can I nerf myself, and more of pushing the limits of what's possible. That said, the run officially begins as the dorm we just moved into suddenly gets attacked by this thing. Really? A bunch of hands? Okay, spoke too soon. Thankfully, our protagonist awakens to his power as the first mandatory fight of this challenge begins. This is an extremely easy fight since these two shadows are weak to fire. Knocking them down with Agi followed up by a basic attack should do the trick. This fight will also require a lucky dodge as the enemy shadow goes in for a friendly hug. With some good RNG, we actually succeed on the first try. Easy. Didn't even break a sweat. As our MC recovers from the chaos of that night, we also go through some tutorial segments courtesy of Mitsuru. These serve as a gentle reminder of some game mechanics, but let's be real, we're already thinking 10 steps ahead. In the meantime, let me further explain some of the rules of this run. Most importantly, what exactly counts as a hit for this challenge. I'll consider a hit as any damage or death resulting from an enemy attack or skill. This includes insta-kills, proccing the homunculus item, getting our HP drained, as well as any ailment affliction landing from enemy skills. Also, I won't be counting stat debuffs like Rakunda and Sukunda as hits. Basically, any damage received or status ailments inflicted will count as a hit. On the flip side, nulling, draining, or repelling attacks will not be counted as hits since, well, we don't actually end up taking any damage. Before we dive too deep into the run, let me also set some expectations straight. This playthrough isn't a full, uninterrupted, no-hit run from start to finish. While pulling that off would be absolutely bonkers, not to mention attempting that kind of run without any prior routing would probably be nearly impossible. So instead, if I get hit, I'll be treating it as a death. Either I let myself get knocked out, or simply exit the game and reload from my previous save. Think of it like return by death in ReZero, or in this case, return by hit. With that out of the way, now the fun really begins. Onto the first real dive into Tartarus. The evening starts off as I climb up to the 5th floor, skipping most of the random encounters along the way. Once there, I teleport downstairs to grind a few levels on the lower floors. This way, I can save a lot of SP by grinding on the enemies weak to slash. From this, I managed to snag a few personas from shuffle time while also hitting level 5 in the process. A solid start to the run so far, if I do say so myself. Now feeling slightly confident, I have an attempt at the first floor guardian. a pair of ruthless ice ravens. In my opinion, by far the hardest sections of this run will be during the early game bosses, where we won't have many tools to deal with enemy attacks, and for the most part, we will be at the mercy of RNGesus. No, not you, Revolver Jesus. Luckily for us though, most of these early game bosses have exploitable weaknesses. These ice ravens are no exception. Weak to fire should be easy enough, right? Nope. This first attempt, a complete disaster, thanks to some truly abysmal RNG. I get introduced to the harsh reality of this challenge by getting handed the very first death of the run. The main strategy here relies on a prayer and a 20% chance, making one of the ravens dizzy so it skips its turn. Sure, I could raise those odds slightly to around 50% by using a basic attack, but the extra damage from the all-out is crucial for taking down the other raven as fast as possible. After about a handful of attempts and zero luck, I realize there's a bigger problem. Junpei and the ice ravens are tied in agility. Sometimes he moves first, other times, the ravens just give us the middle feather faster than you can say mabufu. Clearly, I needed a new plan. Or in this case, more levels I guess. So back to the grind I go. I gain one more level and fuse Nekomata, a faster persona to tip the odds slightly in my favor. Agility is a game changer during boss fights and tartar sauce. Not only does it determine turn order, but it also heavily affects your dodge and hit rates. Two things that can absolutely make or break a no-hit run. Finally, with the stars aligning and some help from RNGesus, we managed to dizzy the first Ice Raven right off the bat. I waste no time focusing the rest of my attacks on its unlucky twin, taking it out before it can cause any more trouble. And just like that, the first floor guardian is defeated. Not too shabby. Only around 40 more of these boss fights to go. Should be a piece of cake, right? Right? With our first obstacle cleared, we also gain access to a new combat mechanic called shifting, which lets us pass turns to allies when exploiting weaknesses or landing crits. Okay, not exactly new since it's really just a weaker baton pass from Persona 5. Still, it's a nice addition for optimizing our turns in battle. Next up on the list of floor guardians is the barbaric bestial wheel, who is weak to wind, accompanied by two magic hands weak to fire. On paper, another straightforward hit weaknesses and win boss fight. The main issue here is that the bestial wheel has a decently high amount of HP for this level. He also has to be dizzied on the first turn or else he easily lands a hit with his bash attack. Again, with some help from Lady Luck, some gusts of wind, and a Magaru gem obtained from Shuffle Time, we're able to breeze through this fight in just 2 turns. Crisis averted. For now at least. In this next section, let's just say we unlock something very handy for maintaining both this challenge run and my sanity. Quite literally, the Golden Hand. An enemy that feels like it was custom designed by Atlas just for this run. Why? Because they give a ton of experience points and best of all, they don't attack. Yup, that's right. You either kill them or they run away. The only catch is these things are extremely hard to hit, making you waste valuable resources in the process. These guys can also be easily spawned by fast traveling between floors, which makes this the best method for farming for most of the game, especially when coupled with the bonus experience cards from Shuffle Time. More on that later. For now, back to clearing out the floor bosses of this block. The last remaining guardian is the Swift Axle. Much like the barbaric bestial wheel, this guy is also very tanky and can't be taken down that easily. Again, he also has to be dizzied on the first turn or else he just wrecks the team with Magaru, exploiting Junpei's weakness in the process. On the turn it gets up, it's almost always guaranteed to target Junpei. This fight is supposed to teach us about guarding, but we're not really allowed that luxury since that just leads to us getting hit. This is where the secret weapon for this fight comes in. Something I like to call Dodge no Jutsu. Yeah, okay, we're simply relying on RNG again. Like I mentioned earlier, this is gonna be a recurring theme for a lot of the early game bosses. But hey, That's par for the course on Merciless mode, where damage is halved and every fight will feel like a high-risk gamble. And so, by exploiting the boss's weakness, followed up by Yukari's bow attacks, and of course, plenty of prayers to RNGesus, we somehow managed to get by unscathed. With all of the floor guardians now taken care of, it's back to farming some golden hands. These wealth hands are weak to strike damage, so they can easily be farmed without relying on SP. I also get lucky and pick up frost heals for Yukari, boosting her evasion against ice. This will definitely be useful later on. I also spend the next couple of in-game days working on some more social links, focusing on the Magician Arcana with Kenji since we'll be fusing Jack Frost as our MVP for the next boss. To summon him, we simply fuse Omoikane and Pixie, and voila! Say hello to our ice immune buddy who comes with Zio and Sukunda. Zio will give us full elemental coverage together with Yukari and Junpei, while Sukunda on the other hand will absolutely be essential for lowering enemy accuracy. And also Sukunda, more like Sukun.
These nuts.
Anyway, with our prep work done, let the first full moon operation commence. This one takes place on the monorail. Right off the bat, the squad gets separated as Junpei goes full YOLO and charges ahead recklessly. Could've seen that one coming. This full moon operation throws some random encounters at us before we can even face the main boss. Conveniently enough, all these enemies are weak to electricity, so our pal Jack Frost is more than ready to make a shocking debut. After clearing the warm-up rounds, it's now time for the main event.
I've never seen one this big before.
That's what she said.
Innuendos aside, we now face the first major boss battle of the run, the Priestess. The shadow before us is level 11 and has a serious fetish for ice-type magic. To make things even spicier, we also have to beat the boss before the monorail crashes. No pressure though. On the first attempt, we kick things off with Jack Frost casting Sukunda to lower the boss's agility. Much like the previous boss fights in Tartar Sauce, we're going to rely on a relatively simple strategy I like to call Yukari and Junpei, please dodge the ice storm. Makoto dodges like a pro. Not that it matters since he's already immune to ice. Junpei and Yukari on the other hand, not doing too good. Ice Storm connects and we're forced to retry. Looks like we're gonna be here a while. Moving on to attempt number 2 and... Okay, I guess not. The RNG gods decide to show some mercy as Yukari and Junpei successfully evade. I guess miracles do happen. From here on, it's a straightforward and easy fight since the Priestess will waste turns summoning minions and speeding up the monorail, while we continuously pelt it with damage. The summons here are weak to fire, wind, and ice, so we have no problems taking them down. Few more rounds of damage on the boss, and we eventually bring her down as well. Flawless victory achieved, and first full moon boss checked off the list. Moving forward, I think it's important to break down how dodge and hit chance actually work in this game. There are two separate formulas for attacking and defending, so I did the math to calculate the odds of dodging Ice Storm earlier. The Priestess is level 11 and has an agility stat of 11. We add that to 200, which is a numerator of 1. The interesting part here is that being more level doesn't mean that much dodging attacks, but that is more of the issue we have access to. Let's use Yukari's skills as an example, which has an evasion rating of 31. Dividing that by 2, we get 15.5, and adding 100 get 115.5 stars on meter. And by 11 by 115.5, we get around a 98% chance to hit and 30% chance to dodge. We also factor in Sukunda, so we multiply this by 0.7. Also, don't forget we also get dodge ice, so we multiply this further by 1.5. All things considered, we see that we have around 40% chance to dodge ice storm with Yukari and a 30% chance to dodge Junpei. Finally, we calculate the probability of both dodging the ice storm. We simply multiply probabilities, resulting in a 13% chance of both dodging the ice storm. On with math, we actually slow this part down. Now, I know math can be scary for some people, but there it is just in case you like crunching numbers like me. You know what else is scary though? Believe it. Or don't. Okay, Okay, not really that scary unless your name is Yukari Takeba. But we'll get back on the case later. For now, it's time for another serving of tartar sauce. This time around, we have a very welcome addition to our party, Akihiko. He'll be extremely useful for hitting all of the next floor bosses' weaknesses to electricity. Of course, I wish it were as easy as that, but it never is. The next floor guardian instantly humbles me. Another trio of angry birds. And no, this isn't the mobile game. These ravens are seriously out for some blood. Currently, Yukari is my fastest member in this fight, so I guess it's time to put all our eggs in her basket. The strategy? You guessed it. Make the Will-O-Wisp Raven dizzy so it skips its turn. Talk about deja vu, right? Once that happens, the rest of the team easily dispatches the grounded Raven. You could say everything went exactly as planned. Alright, that's enough bird puns for one video. With some more levels from the previous boss fight and a bit of golden hand farming, I decide to fuse Zochoten in order to get our first auto buffs in Auto Tarukaja and Tsukukaja. This will also make it a bit easier to farm golden hands with the added accuracy buff. Now, if only I'd realized how little this would do for the absolute massacre about to unfold. The next set of floor guardians features back-to-back battles, the first of which is against the Heretic Magus and Grievous tables. The first fight of this gauntlet isn't too difficult. We'll want to knock down the Heretic Magus first by exploiting its weakness to electricity. This then gives us more chances to make it dizzy when we use Freeze Spray or Mabufu to knock down the tables. The following all-out attack wipes out the extra furniture, allowing us to easily deal with the remaining Magus. Now, the next immediate fight is against the Slaughter Twins and Disturbing Dice. I guess you could say without the help of RNG on this one, things can get a bit dicey. Yeah, okay, I tried. Here's the problem though. The Disturbing Dice has no weaknesses, so launching an all-out attack to either dizzy or take out the twins will be extremely difficult unless we can somehow land a crit on the dice. The worst part is, if I take a hit, it's all the way back to square one. Yep, those tables will be ready and waiting down there to get their revenge. After a few attempts, not gonna lie, I was this close to throwing in the towel since the odds of landing a crit here are absolutely abysmal, even with crit rate boost from Zochoten. I could have resorted to using Assault Dive, which gives me around a 1 in 5 chance to crit, but Vacuum Slash is kind of better here for more chance to dizzy, plus we really need the additional damage to kill the twins. Just when I was about to finally call it quits, Zochoten pulls off the impossible as he lands an absolutely massive triple crit on Vacuum Slash, leaving the enemies wide open for an all-out attack. I really only needed the crit on the dice here, with Vacuum Slash having a 5% chance to crit. I crunched the numbers and the probability of this happening is around a 0.012% occurrence. So around 1 in 10,000 attempts will be a triple crit Vacuum Slash. Crazy, right? Yeah, looks like I used up all my good karma on this fight. Moving on to the last floor guardian for the night, the infamous Change Relic. If you face this boss, you already know the pain. It's got a mountain of HP, no weaknesses, and a knack for exploiting our team's weaknesses. Good times, good times. No need to worry though. Despite this, the boss also has one fatal flaw. Its opening moves are scripted. It spends its first turn identifying our weaknesses and spends its second turn debuffing our party's defense. This makes this fight a DPS race since we essentially have 2 turns to land some crits before things get ugly. Oh, and one more thing. This boss can also be afflicted with distress from Aki's Sonic Punch, which pretty much guarantees a crit on the next turn. To be fair, I didn't really have too much trouble here since a defense debuff followed up by some lucky crits melts the boss like ice cream on a hot summer's day. Guess that's RNG for ya. With the Floor Guardians done and dusted, we complete our preparations for the next full moon by fusing Rakshasa. I also made sure to have it inherit Zeo and crit rate boost, which we'll be passing on to another persona in the near future. There's also Apt Pupil, which you can get from Archangel, but I didn't really bother with that one since we won't be needing crits for the next boss. What we will be needing though is a Pierce type physical attack. I only had single shot from skill cards available at this point in time. Nothing too flashy, but it should still get the job done. With our prep more or less complete, we get back on the case regarding Fuka's disappearance. While the team looks for some more leads, the run actually gets ended by some thugs, with Junpei taking a hit straight to the gut. Oof, that looked like it hurt. Obviously just kidding about the run ending. This is just a cutscene, so it doesn't actually count. In any case, big thanks to our resident edgelord, Shinjiro Aragaki, for saving the day. Before I get sidetracked by more cutscenes, let's jump straight to the moment you've all been waiting for. The Royal Rumble against the Emperor and Empress. Fuka joins the team with her newly awakened persona, but let's be real, she's not really gonna be doing much here. Sorry, Fuka.
Please give me some time.
The Emperor and Empress always start the fight with the same weaknesses. The Empress is weak to Pierce type attacks, and the Emperor is weak to electricity. Should be simple enough, right? Well, at least I thought so. My first attempt was more or less an attempt at trying to get a feel for their attack patterns. Things started off okay, and I managed to chunk down the Empress. But then the Emperor decided to flex with a Getsue straight to Akihiko's face. RIP. And honestly, there was no way I was sitting through all those cutscenes again, so I just let them KO me for the retry. Thanks for nothing, Emperor. Armed with a bit more knowledge from my first attempt and my previous playthrough, I noticed a pattern here. It seems that after the first turn, the Empress always casts Fire Break, while the Emperor will go for some sort of physical attack in either Getsue, Zan-e, or Tempest Slash. Knowing that, on my second attempt, I do more or less the same thing on the first turn. Then Akihiko beautifully dodges Tempest Slash like Neo from the Matrix. On our next round, we once again exploit the Royals' weaknesses, and that was that. Checkmate. Another flawless victory. Yeah, okay, as expected, this is one of the easiest boss fights in the game. But nonetheless, this is a victory worth celebrating. Besides, if this is the warm-up, I can already feel the storm brewing ahead. Alright folks, as we head into the next story arc, the game decides to be generous and gives us a few new tools to deal with the upcoming difficulty spike. Some of these are absolute game changers, while others, well, not so much. Firstly, we now get Fuka as a navigator, which means Mitsuru can now join us for combat. Who doesn't love a good Ice Queen on their team? Also, we can now cultivate some veggies at the dorm's rooftop. A certain someone would definitely be proud of us.
Great vegetables.
We also unlock combat characteristics, which gives our party members some nice passive abilities. I'm not really gonna go over these, but you can probably guess who gets the best one for this challenge, given our reliance on RNG. And last but certainly not the least, we can now use Theurgies. You can think of these as super moves, limit breaks, or if you're an OG, fusion skills from P3 Fez. Whatever you call them, they're absolutely chef's kiss for this run. These Theurgy skills really make this challenge a hell of a lot easier. Allow me to demonstrate why with the next visit to Tartarus. But first, mandatory disclaimer. Yes, I take force damage during the Theurgy tutorial, but no, it doesn't count. Loophole no jutsu activated. Anyway, the thing with Theurgies is it can always be built up before any Floor Guardian fight, which pretty much trivializes any more challenges with regards to these bosses. This is mostly due to these skills doing insane damage on top of ignoring any resistances bosses may have. So yeah, Servant Tower on the 42nd floor, quickly demolished. Lascivious lady on the 54th floor, charmed and nuked with Theurges. Fleet-footed cavalry, swiftly stomped. These Arca block bosses never stood a chance. Easy. What's not so easy though is the grind needed for the next operation. Buckle up because this is where the fun really begins. And by fun, I mean fun if you like repetitive grinding.
What?
I'll mention now that the next full moon bosses are around level 26, and to do them hitless, we would need to be at the very least level 38. Yep, a whole 12 levels above the next boss. Trust me, this is the bare minimum level we need to be without DLC personas, and anything less is a one-way ticket to Game Over City. You'll see why later on. On the bright side of things, only Makoto needs to be level 38, so I bench everyone else to reduce the grinding time by a significant amount. And so I get to work, pretty much committing mass genocide on the golden hands of the Arca block. Here's a fun fact for you. The game implements an EXP penalty for being over-leveled. Of course it does. But since this is a mandatory grind, we simply power through it with sheer determination and the help of questionable amounts of caffeine.
That about does it.
Alright.
No shadows detected.
After finally reaching level 38, it's time to build the dream team. So let's pay a visit to our long-nosed friend for a complete roster change of personas. Here's our lineup. First up, and main reason we need to be level 38 is to be able to fuse Seiryu, a persona of the Temperance Arcana. This persona gets Tetrakarn at level 40, which will allow us to reflect a single physical attack on one of our party members. You probably already know where this skill will come in clutch. We'll also need a persona that nulls light damage. For this one, I went with Virtue from the Justice Arcana. I was also extremely lucky when fusing him since Koga somehow mutated into Auto Masukukaja, which gives our whole team a much needed evasion buff at the start of every fight. Yup, some god tier RNG right there. It's also nice since we won't have access to Fuka's Sylphid Aura during full moon missions. Next, we have one of my all-time favorites, Oni. This persona is an absolute demon, both figuratively and literally. We turn him into a crit machine by having him inherit Getsue, crit rate boost, slash boost, and apt pupil. This guy will be our main go-to for pumping big damage. And last but not the least, we fuse the dynamic duo in Black and King Frost. This gives us access to the second strongest Theurgy in the game called King and I. Well, I guess third if you count Armageddon. Before jumping into the next boss fight, we also pay a visit to Officer Kurosawa to buy some new kicks for higher evasion, as well as some accessories that give us resist charm and resist fear. Not sure if these will actually be useful, but I'll take any advantage I can get. Now armed with an all-star lineup and some new gear, it's time for the next boss battle against the Hierophant. This boss has a ton of HP and a dangerous bag of tricks. He attacks with Makoga and Assault Dive, boosted by some passives in Light Boost, Crit Rate Amp, and Apt Pupil. Yup, this guy hits pretty damn hard, but it doesn't really matter when any hit is game over. He can also inflict fear on the entire party with Doomsday Doctrine, which has an extremely high chance of success since the boss also has Fear Boost. Talk about unfair, right? Thankfully, the boss's opening attacks are scripted as usual. It always starts off with Makoga followed up by Doomsday Doctrine on the next turn. So I guess the best way forward is simple. Take him down as fast as possible. I have Virtue equipped as my initial persona, so Makoga isn't really a problem for our MC. The real issue is dodging on all other party members. And of course, I was pretty damn unlucky despite already having Auto Masuku and debuffing the boss with Sukunda. After a couple of attempts, the party narrowly dodges the boss's opening attack with some fancy footwork. Here's where things get even more interesting. Crits are now the name of the game, and Oni is our star player. And so with the crit from Oni's Getsue to knock down the boss, we easily take down the Hierophant in 2 attacks. Alright, in hindsight, maybe I could have just tried to go for the crit on turn 1, but the defense debuff might have been the difference between 2 or 3 shotting it. Also, I guess I'm more than overleveled for this fight, but still. Most of the credit goes to Getsue being absolutely busted with its multipliers on a full moon. Don't worry, you'll see more of this soon enough. But now my friends, the real fun, or rather, the real pain begins. The next boss battle of the evening is the Lovers Arcana, and this one's no joke. The boss is hard enough on a regular playthrough, and this is probably going to be the worst full moon operation of the run, just because we have to fight 2 bosses back to back without the chance to save in between. Meaning if we get hit, it's back to the Hierophant downstairs. Once again, no pressure. First off, this boss also has a metric crap ton of HP. 4,500 to be exact. Yep, this one's gonna be a rough one unless we can land some massive crits with Oni again. Our one ray of hope, however, is much like the other bosses, the Lover's first few turns are scripted. The first attack, Holy Arrow on one of our male party members. In our case, it always seemed to target Aki. The real issue though, this Holy Arrow is kind of special since it always lands as a crit, so dodging here is absolutely off the table. Thankfully, we came prepared and have Tetrakarn to reflect it. This is why hitting level 38 and unlocking Seiryu was mandatory. Once we deal with the boss's opener, it's time to bring the heat on the counter attack. I immediately unleash Yukari's Teargy, which she starts the fight with, easily dealing 500 damage to the boss. Unfortunately for the Lovers, this is nothing compared to our MC's love language, physical damage. We once again score a nice crit with Oni's Getsue, knocking down the boss for the count. On the additional turn, I unleash King and Die, which just barely kills the oversized Cupid. Then, the Lovers unleashes its desperation move in Marin Karin, targeting our MC and fails. After that, it's GG. Finally, Oni drops another unnecessary crit at the end just to flex, showing why he's the legendary crit demon. And just like that, another flawless victory. I'll be honest here folks, this was the boss I spent the most time planning for, even running simulations for this fight on my casual playthrough. But I guess the prep paid off in the end, making this fight look deceptively easy. So far, it feels like I'm emulating the cautious hero, over-prepared and grinds to max level before every boss fight. But hey, I guess that's just the nature of a hitless run. Better safe than sorry, right?
Ready perfectly.
Moving on to the next chapter of our story, we welcome another brand new addition to our squad, everyone's favorite household appliance turned combat specialist, Aegis. Part-time bread burner, part death dealer, and full-time toaster waifu, she'll definitely come in clutch for our next boss battles. Before that though, I made sure to buy the Tetracorn set from Tanaka Shady Commodities on July 19. This gives us 3 Tetracorn and 3 Makaracorn to reflect physical and magical attacks on one of our party members. These items are absolutely non-negotiable for what's to come. Apart from the usual destruction of some floor bosses with the help of crits and back Theurgies, there's really not much to be said about the guardians of this block. Ochlocratic Sands, weak to ice, so Black Frost easily cleans them up with no effort. Arcanist Decapitator? Okay, maybe I made a slight oopsie, but no problems adjusting the next time around with King and Die. Deviant Convict with no weaknesses? No problem. Crits and Theurgies make short work of this troublemaker. And lastly, the Dancing Duo, seriously mismatched against the duo of Junpei and Aegis, our 2 best physical damage dealers. The dependent partner is weak to pierce type attacks, so yeah, GG easy, no re. On to more important matters. We now also unlock the use of the Great Clock, another very nice feature added to Reload. This lets us bring everyone's levels on par with Makoto without having to do any grinding whatsoever. Yes please. Unfortunately, while the Great Clock saved us from grinding levels, there's another kind of grind we need to do: chest farming. On my way up, I made sure to leave all the purple chests untouched. This is because the Yabasha block is the first block where we can obtain mirrors from chests. Both are lifesavers for this challenge and we'll be manipulating RNG by doing some good old save scumming. We'll want all the attack mirrors and magic mirrors, which function the same as tetracorns from Tanaka. I got around 7 mirrors in total, which should be enough for the next boss. Finally, to round off our prep for the next full moon, I fuse up Girimekala for his affinity to pierce type attacks. We'll also want him to inherit Tetrakarn. The other skills won't really matter that much. For our damage dealer, I went with Thoth since he gets Concentrate. I also added an ice boost for synergy with King and Dai. And that's about it really. Now it's time to go to war. Next up, we face the duo of Chariot and Justice, starting out as a single hulking tank. And when I say tank, I mean tank. Yeah, couldn't really think of anything there. This monstrosity has an absurd amount of HP and resists every type of attack except Almighty, turning the entire fight into a drawn-out war of attrition. If you're a fan of slow grindy battles, then boy do I have a treat for you. The tank's main gimmick is spamming either AoE or single target pierce type attacks, so we'll be using up all our attack mirrors alongside Tetrakarn from Girimekala. To be fair, it's kind of a nice change in pace from having to rely on RNG to dodge everything. On the flip side, this also means if we run out of mirrors or Tetracorns, well, that's game over, essentially putting us on a timer to kill the boss. Oh, and one last thing, crits won't matter here since the boss can't be knocked down. Most of my failed attempts against this boss were due to carelessness, underestimating my own firepower, and not having the attack pattern down pat. Turns out, you can't brute force your way through everything in a hitless run. Who knew?
Junpei-kun's out of the fight!
To beat this boss without taking a single hit, patience is the key. Unlike the previous boss fight so far, this fight isn't about killing the boss fast. It's about stalling and biding time for one glorious burst of power. Since the tank alternates between AoE and single target attacks, you also have to carefully plan each turn. It's less of a brawl and more of a chess match. If chess had tanks that could destroy you in one hit, I guess. Here's the game plan. Chip away at the tank's absurd HP with Mitsuru's Ice Break combined with Bufudyne from Thoth while slowly building up everyone's Tier G. Meanwhile, we can keep Reflect Up on the whole party thanks to our stockpile of attack mirrors and Tetracorns. Again, it's a slow, intense game of attrition and every move counts. After a few rounds, everyone maxes out their Theurgy gauge, signaling the beginning of the Blitzkrieg. Makoto kicks things off by unleashing King and Dai, which brings the tank to just below 50% and also forcing it to split up. Aegis then follows up by activating Orgia mode to instantly delete the Justice in one strike. Talk about a toaster with some firepower. Finally, Junpei and Mitsuru take care of the remaining Chariot with Hack and Slash and Blizzard Edge. And just like that, boom! Another flawless victory. To cap off our hard-fought dub, we have two new recruits joining the team, Ken and Koromaru. These two might be small in stature, but trust me, Their contributions will be nothing short of massive. At this point in the game, ending fights quickly and landing crits will be our bread and butter, but you probably already knew that by now. So Koromaru, or as I like to call him, Butter Dog,
the dog with the butter,
earns his spot with his power howling and revolution buff, turning everyone on the squad with physical damage into absolute crit machines. This pup will truly be the butter to our bread. Meanwhile, Ken brings one of the most clutch abilities for this challenge, Divine Intervention. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait a bit before we see that in action since this only gets unlocked with his second awakening later on in October. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. For now, he'll be a solid backup since he can at least learn Tetrakarn and Makarakarn. Before diving back into tartar sauce, we somehow end up facing this familiar looking shadow with Takaya. Not much to report here since I used Anubis to deal with any damage while Takaya shows off and does all the heavy lifting. Okay, this is the one time I'm gonna thank you, Revolver Jesus. As it turns out, you can't actually lose this fight, so while it wasn't the most challenging evening, it was certainly an interesting one. It's not every day you get to team up with Revolver Jesus himself. Moving on to slightly more notable events, with Koromaru and his buffs now combining with our newly fused Osei, we easily breeze through the next set of Floor Guardians. None of these unfortunate shadows had any resistance to slash-type attacks, so with Deathbound on Osei, everything in its path was sliced and diced like a piece of chicken and blindfolded Gordon Ramsay. It was almost too easy. Almost. Of course, there were a few hiccups here and there where some careless mistakes may or may not have resulted in a couple of untimely hits, but hey, we don't talk about those. Moving on to our prep. Next on the agenda, saves coming for chest loot. This time, the shopping list calls for magic mirrors specifically. After what felt like an eternity of Persona 3 reloading, I managed to scrape together 7 magic mirrors while still having some leftover Makarakorns from the last boss fight. Then comes a bit of leveling. I team up with Ken to boost him up alongside my Anubis. The goal, unlock both Tetrakarn and Makarakarn. Because during a hitless run, nothing compares to the ability to reflect everything. Now it's time to pay Igor a visit and fuse the real MVP for the next fight. I needed a persona that could shrug off electric attacks like it's nothing. Say hello to Mothman, a persona of the Hermit Arcana. By fusing Ganga and Setanta, I not only got this perky looking bug hero, but also transferred over both Tetrakarn and Makarakarn. Say what you will about Mothman's appearance, but this guy is about to be the unsung hero of the hour. Now armed with a good stock of mirrors, a boosted Ken Amada, and a Mothman ready to repel electric shenanigans, we're now ready perfectly for the next full moon boss. The next full moon operation pits us against the Hermit. Much like the previous boss, the Hermit is shockingly tough, packing a whopping 8,000 HP while completely nullifying wind, electric, and dark attacks. But not only is this thing tanky, it also has a ridiculous 90 magic stat, dishing out charged electric AoE attacks thinking he's Zeus or something. Unfortunately for this thing though, we're turning its greatest strength into its biggest weakness. Our strategy for this boss fight is straightforward and simple. Reflect all its electrical shenanigans back at its face. This is also why I brought Akihiko along for the ride. Interestingly enough, this is one of the rare fights of the run that's actually easier on Merciless difficulty. Why? Because the Hermit's reflected attacks do more damage, turning its overpowered AoE moves into our best weapon. Sometimes, Merciless really does live up to its name, just not in the way you'd think. The Hermit always starts the fight with a Mazio, then spends the next 2 turns charging up for its devastating Giga Spark. Sounds terrifying, right? Well, as long as we keep up both physical and magical reflex, it's really more like watching a toddler throw a tantrum. While charging, the Hermit can still throw out Assault Dive, Tetrakarn, and Dekaja to keep things interesting. This means we have to stay sharp. One misstep and it's curtains. Once the boss gets low enough on HP, he'll start using Accelerated Charge to power up its Desperation move in Terra Spark, before unleashing it on the next turn. We'll know when this happens when it starts glowing blue compared to when it charges for Giga Spark. The Hermit may be tanky, magic heavy, and full of tricks, but it's no match for a well-executed strategy. Watching it just fry itself with its own electric attacks is pure satisfaction. And just like that, another flawless victory. Alright folks, we're officially nearing the end game now. Only a few more full moons stand between us and the finish line. Up till now, the challenge run's been a smooth ride. Well, for the most part at least. But now I think it's time to take things up a notch. First order of business. I spent some time progressing the strength social link with Yuko all the way to rank 9. Would have loved to max it out before our next big fusion, but I guess this'll do for now. Next, it's back to Tartarus to terrorize some more golden hands. The goal, hit level 54 ASAP. Surprisingly, this didn't take as long as expected. And with that, it's once again time to pay a visit to Mr. Longnose himself. We finally say hello to Siegfried, an absolute Giga Chad of the Strength Arcana. If you've played this game, you already know how broken this guy is. For those who haven't, let me paint a picture for you. Auto Rebellion, Brave Blade, Crit Rate Amp, and Slash Amp. This persona was made specifically to delete some health bars. But more importantly, together with Mithras, he gives us access to the best Theurgy in the game, Scarlet Havoc. If you thought Theurgies were busted, this one takes it to the next dimension. At this point, I could almost consider the challenge run done and dusted. Siegfried is an absolute monster and late game powerhouse, mowing down anything and everything in its path. Don't believe me? Well, just watch this guy make these so-called floor guardians look like training dummies. The next full moon mission brings us against the Strength and Fortune. Despite having one of the best personas in the game, this fight was still a tricky one. On my first few attempts, mistakes were made, because apparently I'm bad at judging animations. I originally assumed Mobius Rondo was a slash type attack. Seriously, doesn't it look like one? But nope, It's strike-type physical damage. And guess what Siegfried doesn't nullify? This led to a few unfortunate resets while trying to Google, can you dodge Mobius Rondo Persona 3 Reload? Spoiler, I don't think it can. Eventually, I just gave up and decided to use mirrors and Tetrakarn to deal with it. Shout out to Reflect Tech for saving the day once again. Anyway, the real problem in this fight isn't strength, it's fortune. This sneaky little troll is completely invincible until we take down strength. The worst part is, every turn he gets, he spins his infamous Wheel of Fortune. Fortunately for us though, this attack is scripted. Yup, the boss pulls a fast one on us. There's actually no RNG involved here. Which is honestly a relief because my relationship with RNG so far is complicated. Fortune's first wheel after Mobius Rondo will always buff everyone's attack. What a nice gesture. However, we'll save our thanks for later because the real fun starts on his second wheel. This one will unleash 300 damage to our entire party. And if this effect wasn't a surprise enough for ya, this attack is unavoidable. No reflecting, no dodging, nothing. I'm sure you already know where this is going by now. If it wasn't already obvious, we have to kill him before he uses his second wheel, or else this'll be where the run ends. Here's where things get poetic. The only way to beat Fortune is to embrace RNG. Crits are again the absolute name of the game, mainly because this lets us fully charge up our Theurgy gauge. We're gonna need both Siegfried and Junpei to go wild, since every attack needs to be a crit here. And I really mean it when I say every attack. No crit, it's a reset. It's that simple. Let me give you a rundown of our odds. Braveblade and Scarlet Havoc both have a bit over 50% chance. Meanwhile, Junpei's Deathbound has around 33% chance to crit given his combat characteristic. Okay, the odds aren't terrible but still, prayers up to RNGesus on this one. We're also gonna be abusing the fact that strength can be knocked down and targeted for an all-out attack to make it stand back up again. Our first Braveblade on Siegfried crits for the knockdown and extra Theurgy buildup. After an all-out attack, next up to bat is Junpei, who also lands a crit here to shift the turn back to Makoto. We use this turn to set up Tetrakarn and mirrors on the whole party to deal with the incoming Rondo. As a bonus, our MC will build up his Theurgy with every use of his persona. Fortune buffs everyone's attack, and on our next turn, we charge up on Makoto to get a bit over double damage on our next attack. This also puts him one turn away from fully charging up his Theurgy gauge. And now we leave it all in the hands of Junpei, who brings us one step closer to victory with another absolutely massive Deathbound crit. He then passes the turn back to Makoto, who unleashes Scarlet Havoc that instantly deletes the Strength Arcana. But this fight isn't over just yet. I thought Akihiko's gigantic fist combined with Junpei's Theurgy would be enough to take down Fortune, but it just barely lives with a sliver of HP. What follows next is absolute chaos. It does its desperation Wheel of Fortune, which thankfully does nothing. But then it surprises me with a follow-up Garudine targeting Mitsuru. It was looking like another reset until she pulls off an absolutely insane dodge out of nowhere, saving the run. And just like that, another flawless victory. What a clutch. Immediately after the fight, October ends the run with a hit straight to the feels, bringing us one of the most impactful moments in the game, Shinji and Ken's second awakening scene. And with it, we finally unlock Ken's Theurgy Divine Intervention. This skill is an absolute game changer, and honestly, it's a shame we only get access to it so late in the run. Well, better late than never, I suppose. And now, what better way to celebrate this momentous occasion than by picking a fight with death itself? That's right, folks. It's time to take on the Reaper. Although this boss is completely optional, beating him would skyrocket our team's levels all the way to the top. The only problem is, this guy is hands down the hardest boss of the entire run. And not just because of his raw power. No, this guy is already a pain in the ass before the fight even starts. First, you have to wait a few minutes for him to spawn. 5 minutes to be exact. Honestly, regret not allowing speed-ups at least for this section, but here we are. While waiting, here's my lineup for the first Reaper kill. Junpei, Koromaru, and Ken. Junpei for big damage crits, and Koromaru and Ken for their godlike support skills. Sounds solid on paper, right? Well, reality had other plans. As the name suggests, the Reaper does not mess around. I went in with my MC at level 60 and everyone else in their low 50s. Let me tell ya, this was a huge mistake. The Reaper literally made quick work of us, mostly thanks to his overwhelming stats. Agility in particular was a major issue. The Reaper kept getting 4 turns in a row, which basically meant one thing: utter annihilation. Yeah, it wasn't even close. As you can see, the Reaper isn't just another boss. You could say it's the final exam for every system the game's thrown at us so far. Stats, gear, persona fusions, combat strategy, and of course, RNG. And so, reconsidering my life choices, I get back on the grind. Don't worry though, we'll be back for revenge later. This battle is far from over. I defeated most of the remaining floor guardians for this block. Bosses on floor 151, 155, and 161, no sweat. Back-to-back battles against the Cruel Greatsword and Invigorated Gigas on 170 and 171, easy peasy. Again, nothing too notable since we have Siegfried demolishing everything and anything in its way. At this point, these floor guardians are really more of a warm-up than a challenge. More importantly, I scooped up more Twilight fragments to trigger the Great Clock, boosting everyone in my party all the way up to level 62. And now, let me run you guys through the new party setup before we challenge the Reaper again, since I think gear will actually play a huge factor in this fight. Firstly, I had Amriteite necklace equipped on everyone but Junpei. This lets us avoid all of the status ailments the Reaper likes to throw out. He mainly uses Confusion and Fear, which is why I had Hero's Knickers and Gallant Sneakers on Junpei instead. This also frees up his accessory slot and lets me use a critical enhancer for Auto Rebellion, which when combined with Koromaru's Revolution turns Junpei into an absolute crit demon. For MC and Ken, I mostly just went with any other gear that passively boosts their stats. Last but not least, I had Koromaru equipped with a powered dog suit for Auto Tarukabellion. With the squad geared up and Theurgies fully loaded, it's time to face the Reaper once again. This time, we're prepared. No more mistakes and no more playing around. It's time for some overdue payback. Or so I thought. This boss is an extremely dangerous and not to mention unpredictable bag of tricks. Unlike every other boss we've faced so far, the Reaper has no script. No predictable patterns and no guarantees. Just pure unhinged chaos. The Reaper's moveset truly is the stuff of nightmares. By far his most deadly combo comes from Virus Breath into Megidolaon, or anything involving one of those two skills really. Anything that involves almighty damage is almost always a guaranteed reset. On top of that, not only does he have full physical damage coverage, but also has access to every element in the game, including insta-kills. And he isn't shy about exploiting weaknesses either. This is mainly why we needed Ken with his new Theurgy, giving us a fighting chance against the Reaper's relentless assault. On paper, the strategy is simple. Take him down as fast as possible. But in practice, it's anything but. With the added stats and levels, the Reaper now only gets 2 consecutive turns instead of 4. Progress, right? But even with fewer turns in between, RNG still plays a massive role in this fight. If he whips out either Virus Breath or Megidola on, say bye-bye to that attempt. Also, every single one of our physical attacks needs to crit. No crit, that's a reset. Yep, simple indeed. It took what feels like a million attempts to get the stars to align, but here it is. The battle where preparation meets patience. We start things off with buffs from Fuka and Koromaru, paving the way for a strong opener. Makoto then follows up with a Brave Blade from Siegfried and the use of a Debilitator Sutra. This nifty item doesn't just nerf the Reaper, it increases the odds of him wasting one of his 2 turns on Heat Riser instead of unleashing Hell. Ken then casts Divine Intervention to keep the team protected, and Junpei chips in with a Vile Assault for some solid damage. So far, so good. On the Reaper's first turn, he attacks with Aegon and casts Heat Riser, which is exactly what we expected. Koromaru then lets a Getsue rip, keeping up the pressure. I pass the turn to Ken, who reapplies Makara Karn on himself while charging half his Theurgy gauge thanks to his combat characteristic. The Reaper's next turn rolls around, but we're more than ready for his onslaught of attacks. I keep up debuffs on him with Debilitator Sutra because if we can continue to bait him into buffing himself instead of attacking, then it's another step towards victory for us. Then Ken lands a crit with Vile Assault, though this time it's more of a bonus since Junpei is ready and waiting in the back for a chance to pass the turn back to him. On the additional turn, Ken reapplies Divine Intervention, while Koromaru uses Power Howling to keep the damage coming. The Reaper then wastes his next turn using Heat Riser and Debilitate. Perfect. Exactly what we wanted. This signals the beginning of the end for him. I debuff his defense one last time with my final Debilitator Sutra, and let Junpei take the lead with his finishing move, Hack and Blast, dealing massive damage. Finally, I pass the turn back to Makoto, activating Shift Amp and Shift Boost before unleashing the killing blow. And just like that, another flawless victory. The entire team levels up to the mid-80s. And yes, that's more than 20 levels in a single fight. It was grueling, frustrating, and almost drove me insane. But in the end, it was so worth it. The Reaper may be down, but this challenge isn't over just yet. I spent the rest of the evening grinding everyone's levels to the max. Sure, I could have taken the easy route, coming back on another day with Armageddon. But where's the fun in that? Besides, the massive boosts in stats and levels on Siegfried and Junpei were more than enough to carry the rest of the squad to max level. At this point, the Reaper goes from being the ultimate challenge to a complete joke. No, seriously, just watch him get 1 or 2 shotted with every rematch. The once dreaded harbinger of death reduced to farming fodder. The feeling is oddly satisfying. With everyone maxed out and ready for action, it's time for one of the final full moon ops of the run. But first, a little trick. Same one I used during the Hermit fight. I bring Ken's SP just below 50% right before the boss battle. This allows him to activate his combat characteristic just before the fight starts. And now, the first showdown of this full moon throws us against Jin and Takaya from STREGA. But now that I'm max level and fully stacked, I can't really call these guys bosses anymore. At best, it's more of a cutscene with extra steps. I spend the first turn setting up buffs and debuffs. Charge on MC, Debilitate with Koromaru, and Makara Karn with Ken. Then, Junpei takes the lead with a nice crit with Brave Blade, following that up with a Vorpal Sword that also crits. These 2 attacks fill up his Theurgy gauge entirely. but we'll chill for now to set up a reflect in case we get targeted for magic damage. On a side note, the reason for this is that there's actually a hard damage cap for this fight, so we can't really end this in a single turn. Then, Jin targets Ken with a dark attack which gets reflected back at him. Revolver Jesus then chimes in saying we have more than luck on our side. And as it turns out, he's absolutely right, as our MC shrugs off Bufudyne like it's nothing. Close call, but now it's lights out for these two on our next turn. Easy first attempt. And now, here we are. The showdown against the last of the 12 shadows, the Hanged Man. Given that we've already beaten the Reaper, this boss isn't exactly terrifying. But let's not get cocky. This massive shadow has a few tricks up its sleeve, and some nasty ones at that. If you're unprepared for its gimmicks, this fight can go sideways real fast. The boss is untargetable at the beginning of the fight as he likes to summon these statues to fight for him. Despite their looks, these guys are actually no joke. They caught me off guard a few times, messing me up with status ailments and even throwing out almighty attacks, which led to some unfortunate hits. Aside from these menacing statues, the boss has different phases where he gains multiple turns as a result of his grim transcendence. Long story short, if he uses this and attacks one of our party members twice in a row, well, I'm sure you know what happens next. The real challenge isn't taking out the boss quickly. It's managing and knowing when to end turns at the right time. If we end our team's turn right before he summons his third statue, it's usually game over. Here's another issue. The almighty attacks in this fight are dodgeable, but the odds are extremely low. If we let our turn end when the Hanged Man is grounded, he'll use Grim Transcendence, giving him several turns, and the freedom to hit us with God's Hand or any of his almighty attacks, which also means GG for that attempt. This is a long, multi-phase fight, which means our usual strategy of rushing down the boss is completely off the table. Another rare fight where patience is key. We use our first turn to take out the first wave of statues. The middle statue is weak to slash, the right statue is weak to pierce, and the left statue is weak to strike. We'll also need Junpei to transition the boss to his second phase in a single hit with Hack and Blast. On the next wave of statues, we set up defensive buffs with Ken's Divine Intervention. The first step to do this fight without getting hit is letting our turn end now while the second wave of statues are still out. This second wave isn't really a threat as long as we take out the left statue weak to slash damage. The other statues will just spend their turns debuffing and healing, giving us more time to set up. As you probably figured, there's also a lot of RNG involved here. Not just for landing crits, but also for what the Hanged Man will do with his extra turns. I could have made the Hanged Man transition again, but we would have ended the turn just before he summons his third statue. So I take my chances here as the Hanged Man unleashes two God's Hands on two different party members. Okay, nice. Some good RNG. On the following turn, we make him phase transition once again with attacks from Koromaru and Ken. When the third and final statue spawns, things can get tricky since it resists all types of damage. This statue attacks using Almighty, so this is where Junpei's Theurgy comes in, delivering the firepower needed to take it out in one hit. What happens after that is completely in the hands of the RNG gods. Thanks to a clutch dodge by Ken that saves this attempt, alongside some useless turns by the Hanged Man as he casts Maracunda, Heat Riser, and Concentrate, we unleash one final Scarlet Havoc to put down the Hanged Man for good. And just like that, Another flawless victory. As we move into the final arc of the game and of this challenge, there's just a few things we need to check off from the old to-do list. First up is a visit to our favorite teacher, the antique shop owner. My bad, wrong Persona game. Here we pick up the flaring flare in exchange for some materials. This piece of armor for Yukari gives her Nullfire, which will come in handy sooner than you think. Then it's time for a date with Destiny, or rather with Chidori. And let me tell ya, this woman has completely lost her marbles. It's hard not to pity her as she spirals further into madness. This boss fight, if you can even call it that, is okay, chill Chidori, I take that back. Anyway, this boss fight is pretty straightforward, since Chidori only attacks with fire magic and slash type attacks. All we have to do is set up defensive buffs as usual and we should be fine. There's no gimmicks or surprises here. Just get through her yapping and this should be over before you know it. See? Easy peasy. With Chidori now out of the picture, next up on our chores list is some overdue boss cleanup in Tartarus. Only 2 blocks left in this godforsaken tower, and with everyone at max level, well, you probably know how this goes by now. Wow, would you look at that? We're already at the border floor. How'd that happen? With nothing else to do here, we call it a night. The days fly by and December hits us with the biggest decision of the run. Do we spare Ryoji and continue the endless struggle against death itself? Or kill him and live out the rest of our days peacefully? Honestly, the second option doesn't sound too bad. We've endured more than enough suffering throughout this challenge run. You know what? Fine. Goodbye, Ryoji. Roll the credits. And there you have it, folks. Can you beat Persona 3 Reload hitless? Technically, yes. Yes, you can if you choose to go with the bad ending. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and don't... Yeah, okay, let's be real here. We can't let it end like that, can we? It just feels wrong on so many levels to leave the run on the bad ending. And so we spare Ryoji, pushing forward to face death head on. It's only fitting, right? And so, welcome to the final block of Tartarus, Adama. Sure, the place looks cool, but at this point, none of the floor guardians ever stood a chance. Everything just gets one-shotted by Scarlet Havoc or my teammates Theurgies. Floor guardians? More like floor decorations, am I right? Along the way, you can also gather materials like Dead Moon Husks, Gold Quartz, and Rubies to craft the best gear in the game. But no one wants to see any more grinding. So let's fast forward to the final mission, the promised day. The stakes couldn't be higher. It's January 31st and the challenge run is nearly complete. Let's give this run the ending it deserves. We start by clearing the warm-up rounds, or should I say, the last of the floor guardians. We start strong by clearing the final gauntlet on floors 253, 254, and 255. Back-to-back-to-back boss fights. But we breeze through them with Theurgies, ignoring resistances like they simply don't exist. Now there's just one more, or I guess 2 more obstacles in our way before we can get to the final boss. Yep, for the last time we go up against the remaining members of STREGA. Jin is the first of the 2 and well, this guy is kind of a joke. Under normal circumstances, that is. The problem is he kind of has plot armor. What I mean by that is he has several hard damage caps, preventing us from just outright ending the fight in one turn. He mainly attacks with his grenades and elemental magic damage, targeting our team's weaknesses in the process. However, Ken's divine intervention easily negates all his shenanigans. The real problem here lies with his desperation move. After Jin injects himself with performance-enhancing drugs, we push him to the brink of death. This is where he'll unleash his run-ending Megidola on. And when I say run-ending, I truly do mean it. There is absolutely no way to avoid getting hit by this attack. No nulling, no reflecting, no dodging, nothing. It's game over every single time. I know this is where you expect me to pull off some sort of insane original strategy, but trust me, I've tried just about everything. I know it's an anticlimactic way to end the run, but there's just no way to beat this due to the hard damage caps. Oh, and it's the same story with Takaya by the way, but instead of Megidolaon, he uses Paradise of Quietus. I guess these last resort attacks are supposed to serve as their theurgies, and we kind of get a taste of our own medicine. Kind of ironic, right? This whole challenge run, we've been abusing the strength of theurgies, and now we get absolutely demolished by them. Sure, there's still loophole no jutsu to be invoked, but it just doesn't feel right to use it here given these are major boss battles and not tutorials. So yeah, there you have it ladies and gentlemen. Once again, can you beat Persona 3 Reload hitless? Nope, not if you're aiming for the true ending at least. But in case any of you are wondering, let's say we do invoke loophole no jutsu. Is it possible to defeat Nyx without getting hit? Spoiler, yep, it's definitely possible. I won't really go over the mechanics and outtakes for this fight cause quite frankly the run is over at this point. And so while we fight the final boss, let me instead reflect upon what we've accomplished on our journey so far. The truth is, a lot of this run has heavily depended on RNG. From dodging attacks, landing crits, and even what moves bosses like the Reaper and Hangman use on their turns. I know it wasn't exactly the hardest challenge out there, but it was still one of the most demanding in terms of time it takes to reset, patience, and emotional damage. Still, it was fun, chaotic, and weirdly rewarding. Not bad for my first challenge run if I do say so myself. And if you've made it this far into the video, you're a legend. Let me know what you thought of this challenge and even some challenge runs you'd maybe want to see me do in the future. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll leave you guys with the rest of this epic boss battle. Thanks again for watching and all the heartwarming support. Like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you on the next one.
And take